So Module 4, we're going to start with Dettmer's Chapter 10. And in this module, we're looking at co-teaching as it relates to collaborating and consulting. And so some of this, or most of it, or all of it could be review. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on it, and the chapter covers much more, as always. First of all, it does talk about UDL's relationship in this whole process with co-teaching. And again, this may be, I'm assuming, complete review for all of you, or if not most of you. With universal design for learning, it's a concept taken from architecture where buildings were designed to become accessible and useful to the same degree for everyone, regardless of their mobility needs. So in universal design for learning, you're trying to provide all of the supports, that are easily at our fingertips to everyone, give choices so that often the student is doing their own differentiating once we've provided their means to do that. So, making the instruction different, differentiated instruction, one of those terms, like many we use today, that makes me smile because it's basically what good teaching has been forever, certainly what they did in the one-room schoolhouse. So kids are getting what it is they need, the availability of that if you're teaching a large group and not individually. Alternatives for individuals, though, making adaptations, we're going to talk more about that in a second, remedial instruction if necessary, having the kids learn strategies that they can then use independently, hopefully in the future. And then specific supports are more individualized, but the goal is that this can happen simultaneously for the group. Again, review, this is the classic definition of UDL, that there are many ways to represent things and engage students and have them express what they know. And so giving them the multiple kind of menu of options. So maybe they're getting their information at a different reading level. I'm a proponent of graphic novels, for example, for older kids. Because you can have them read a classic in a graphic novel and get a lot out of it, even if their reading level is a struggle for them. I'm tapping into their interests, trying to engage them, challenge them to be engaged in the material in multiple ways. There are different ways to kind of grab kids, of course. And then allowing them to tell you what they know in different ways. So not requiring a kid to give a speech in front of the class if that's, something that would be very difficult or anxiety ridden, but letting them use other ways to let you know that they've learned from that particular piece of instruction. So UDL is obviously something that we need to consult together about, but when we talk about co-teaching, it really changes the game in so many ways. So it changes how we plan for our lessons. We know that it's not a way of teaching that some educators are comfortable with. It takes away what used to be kind of an individual's domain in the classroom, for sure. Some people are uncomfortable teaching with someone else there because they're concerned about being judged somehow about what they are doing, perhaps. It takes lots of time for planning, and we've talked about that with regard to collaboration from the beginning of this course. And when co-teaching is the goal of designing your UDL, is to do it in that model, then the lots of options can happen. It's really an advantage to have two teachers to make UDL work really well. Your text has lots of methods about how to diversify the way you teach, because students are so diverse in how they recognize what's the core of what's being taught, or what strategy works for them, or how they feel about doing particular kinds of work. So I refer you to the text for a lot more information. And again, probably review, but there are many ways to do co-teaching. The teach and monitor can be tricky with a primary teacher and someone that moves around. It's a really good idea. Sometimes special educators have felt like they're being used as aides in the classroom, to be blunt, when this is used. So it's very much a personality issue around how it works. And don't forget that the special educator can be the primary teacher as well. And the other teacher can monitor, or you can have two special educators trading off, but there needs to be a core balance in how that particular one works. Parallel teaching, then you're really looking at the teachers using their direct instruction with specific groups and changing how they're delivering their instruction to those groups, but the students work with only one teacher, versus station teaching where, again, the teachers are both teaching differently or different content, perhaps, more likely, and the kids are moving around and getting the information from both teachers. And then team teaching, which is a term used a lot when it's not actually what's happening, is when both teachers share equally in the teaching and planning overall. Not every day, perhaps, but there's a real cooperative there, and they're both equally participating in all the facets of lesson delivery and assessment and everything that goes into it, the planning. Excuse me. So the role of collaboration is obviously critical to figuring out how co-teaching is going to work, making the curricular accommodations, modifications. We're going to talk about the differences of those in just a second. Adapting tests and grades, and that can be something that is a real issue of disagreement, and we've mentioned that before as well, about how that should work when you're modifying or accommodating for tests and grades, and then delivering the lesson in different ways. We know that when accommodations aren't enough, and this is what I alluded to a second ago, accommodations are milder changes to what's happening. You're accommodating for the student's needs without doing a lot of changing of the actual content that's being delivered, and it's, how it is being delivered. But with modifications, you're doing more. So the way you can make more modifications is by really changing the outcomes. So you're making bigger moves away from the initial curriculum as it stood. So you might change, and this happens a lot, the number of problems done. You might highlight text, superficial kinds of things. And I will say that sometimes these are used when they shouldn't be, but it's something that pops to mind right away. Oh, let's just have them do less. So be careful that you're using that only when you really should. And when you really should is when there's a need for more processing time. But eventually you'd want the students to be doing the same work the other folks are doing, hopefully. You can modify the functional outcomes. And this is where big changes are made for students with really significantly different abilities from those that the curriculum was designed for example. So this is where, and sometimes this gets kind of out there where we're calling some skills math skills in quotes, but they're very functional. And I mean, it's fine. We might be teaching students, how to add and subtract so that they don't get ripped off at the grocery store. That's certainly mathematical skills. But we're making big changes in exactly what we're teaching. We're being functional rather than purely academic. And the whole idea around those critical functional skills that are absolutely essential is that we're trying from the moment a student with for example, severe cognitive challenge enters school, our goal is they be as independent as possible when they leave. So we shouldn't waste a moment because we know that those folks need more time to learn, more repetitions, lots of teaching in different environments. So the ultimate goal always being increasing their independence when they leave school and become young adults in the community. And then your book spends a lot of time on enhanced outcomes for gifted students, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that just because of the focus of this course. But we don't do a very good job of that overall in school, too, in my experience. There are pockets of excellent programs, but we have to acknowledge that truly gifted kids have different needs that we rarely meet, and certainly can't meet doing things the way we do things normally. So if you are working with gifted students or have an interest in doing that, the information in the text is excellent. We're just not going to have time to get into it for the focus of this course. And then, as your chapters always do, look at ethics, which I know that you see in the end of every chapter. They also look at technology and how it can be used for, in this case, adapting materials for kids with special needs. And there's lots out there. You have to be very careful, of course, with access to the internet. Schools have lots of sites blocked very often, which is a good thing if it doesn't, impede getting to the good information. But all of the things that can be used to help students and modify their lessons and their methods that we can get from the internet, and there are examples, and I've listed some of the ones from the book here. It's fabulous, like it is for working with folks with a different language, to be able to use the very basic sorts of tools that let you change formatting or text reading level you can check, or let kids do concept diagrams on the computer, all of those sorts of things. Again, another standard adaptation that makes me crazy in IEPs is altering the font size. And I see that a lot for students where it makes 0 sense. So we often get this cookie cutter thing going when we make modifications or adaptations. And I know you guys could be the ones who speak up and say, wait a minute, that's everybody's favorite modification, but what about Joey? It doesn't fit in this particular instance.